why stick around to the end of the call? Well, these are the things that you're going to get from the call tonight. So why losing fat after 40 feels harder and why it's not your fault. I'm going to be talking about the three things that actually move the needle and the secret ingredient that makes all of it stick. Plus, there is something special for you at the end of the call too. So a bit about me before we kick off. I've actually been both overweight and underweight in the last decade. And only really in the last 3 years have I got everything figured out. I started regular exercise at the ripe old age of 37. So until then, I was pretty sedentary actually, and I'm now 48. I started with running. That was what I did for a few years, and then lots of cardio after that. But I didn't actually set foot into a gym until I was 45. I'm married. I've got two daughters, aged 14 and 12. And before starting finally, I ran a design agency with my husband, Ben. So essentially, I get it. Busy lives, etc. I'm exactly the same, having a family, career, and so on. So it's a challenge, particularly I think for women at this stage in life, to be able to manage all of that and take care of themselves in the process. But now I'm a level 3 personal trainer and nutrition advisor, and the nutrition part is both for weight management and for sport and exercise. And so far this year, I've helped more than 40 women to start their weight loss journey. So at the moment, it might be that you feel like you are one of these and you can just pop whichever number suits you into the Zoom chat. So either you feel like you're trying, but nothing is working anymore. Maybe you feel like your body's changed and you don't know what you can do about it. Perhaps you dread getting your summer clothes out every year. Perhaps you do know what to do, but actually you're not doing it. Or you might be completely brand new to this, but ready to start and give it 100%. So if you are doing something already, but it's not working for you, it might be that it's one of three common things. So number one is that you could potentially be prioritising doing too much cardio over strength. And we'll talk a bit about that in a little while about why that causes us a problem. It could be that your nutrition isn't quite right. So it might be that you're either overeating or in some cases even undereating. Perhaps you're skipping meals, not tracking, or even perhaps you do think that you're eating healthily but still can't seem to get it right. Or the last one is maybe that, as I said earlier, perhaps you do know everything that you need to do, but actually it's a lack of consistency which is causing you the issue. So first of all, I'm going to talk through the principles behind successful fat loss, and I'm then going to move into how that is hindered, shall we say, after we turn 40, and then the answer to all our problems. So the first thing is, it is simply a science. So it is energy balance. It comes down to the amount of calories that you put in your body and the amount of calories that you burn. Sorry, there's a motorbike going past on the towpath. I'm right by the canal. I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, so what affects our calories out? Well, this comes down to a couple of things. First of all, it is about how many calories do we actually need in order to be able to function. And that is affected by our gender, our age, and how much we weigh when we start. Then, hang on. The second thing that we then layer on top of that is how active we are in our daily lives. So that again comes down to two things. That's how active we are when we're at work and how active we are outside of work. And we layer that on top of the calories that we need in order to function, to work out what our general expenditure is likely to be. And that's why let's say sometimes we can often see a friend who perhaps we perceive is eating loads of food or eating the same as us, but looks completely different. And that generally comes down to just the amount of calories that are being burned. So even if we ate exactly the same as another person, if the calories that we're burning through our daily expenditure are different, then that will lead to us looking different too. And in terms of ideal fat loss, we want this really to sit at around 0.5 kilo or a pound a week. And the risk with losing weight more quickly is essentially that what happens then is that we can start to lose more than fat, and we can actually start to lose muscle as well. And we definitely don't want that, because when we lose muscle, it makes us weaker, it slows our metabolism down, which makes it harder to lose weight, and it makes it easier to put weight back on. So we definitely don't want that. So a bit now about what happens after we've turned 40. So the first thing is that when our estrogen declines, it reduces our insulin sensitivity. So that causes our blood sugar to spike and crash more. And that's why we can be then led to be feeling either more tired or more hungry, or both. Also increases fat storage around the tummy because the body becomes less efficient at processing glucose. Just adding one more person in. Hi, Sarah. We're in the call already, but you can just catch up as we go along. So I was just saying that after we turn 40, basically our estrogen declines, reduces insulin sensitivity, and that can lead us to feeling more hungry and more tired, as well as increasing how we store fat around our tummy because we're less efficient at processing glucose. And while we can still build muscle, it does actually break down faster than ever before. So maintaining strength takes more deliberate effort, even with the same training. Lean muscle can actually decline by 3% for every decade after we've turned 30, and strength can drop by anywhere, can drop by 30% or more between the ages of 50 and 70. So it's a huge drop off and totally different to how that looks if you're a man. Bone density can also decrease by up to 20% in the 5 to 7 years that follow menopause, and that again increases the risk then of osteoporosis. And cholesterol, another thing that tends to happen with perimenopausal women and women post-menopause is that actually our cholesterol goes up. We see a rise in our bad cholesterol and a drop in our good cholesterol. Thankfully, I do have some answers to how we can protect and support these things so that they don't happen to the same degree. So that essentially comes in 3 main pillars. And the first one is strength training. So I'm going to talk a bit about why that's important and then how we approach it. So strength is the only way to see meaningful changes in lean muscle mass at this age. And as I said before, if you're doing lots of cardio, that's not really going to cut it when it comes to building muscle. So we definitely need to be including strength training. And that's because it sends a signal to our body that says, we're telling our nervous system, actually, I need this muscle, so you can't break it down. Muscle is metabolic tissue. So again, the more muscle we have, the more calories we can burn at rest. And muscle also increases insulin sensitivity. So where I was saying before that when our estrogen drops, it reduces insulin sensitivity. The more muscle we can maintain, that will help with the blood sugar swings and fat storage that we talked about earlier. And it also protects bone density, which again, we talked about how the risk of osteoporosis increases once we reach 50. So clearly using strength to protect our bone density matters a lot more at this age. So in terms of how, essentially you need to be lifting weights like a minimum of 3 times a week and ensure that you're doing that in a challenging way by using progressive overload. That basically means you need to follow a structured program in order to see and track progress week to week. When you follow a program, you're able to monitor how much weight you're lifting and how many reps you're doing. So week to week, you can make sure that you're always looking to improve. Because if we're just sort of going into the gym or working out at home and we're just simply lifting the same week and doing the same weight and doing the same reps week on week, then you sort of become in a busy fall and we're not actually providing that stimulus to tell our muscles that we need to protect and grow. And this is where I'd like to introduce by way of picture. Don't worry, I'm not asking her to speak, but my client Michelle, we've been working together since April time. And Michelle actually isn't working out at a gym, she's working out at home. And I think this is just an incredible example of how and what you can achieve by using some weights at home, following a structured program. And you can see not only has Michelle lost weight, but she has also improved her composition. She looks so athletic. I think she looks absolutely incredible. I'm really proud of the work that Michelle has done. So the second thing is movement. So exercise and going to the gym or working out at home is only part of the calories that we burn, and most of the calories that we burn actually come from our everyday movement, not just workouts. So I think a common misconception is that people think if they start going to the gym, that ticks the box and we're getting the movement done. But actually, it's such a small part. Yes, it's so important for muscle, but in terms of burning calories as well, making sure that we're getting lots of movement in our day is, super, super important. So this comes down to our non-exercise activity. So things like walking, getting our steps up, doing the housework, and then making choices like if you're out and about shopping, like using the stairs instead of the escalator or the lift. Just simple things like that will all add up over time. As life gets busier, as I said earlier on in the call, for women like us who've got work, families, managing everything else, we naturally end up sometimes moving less without even realising it. And then added to which, a world built around convenience, daily movement has quietly disappeared from lots of people's lives. So in terms of how, so the couple of things essentially is just simply trying to increase that daily movement without adding more sort of exercise to your day. So I always recommend that you should start off by just simply looking for 2 spots in your day where you can include an extra couple of 10-minute walks. So it doesn't have to be about finding an hour to go out and do a big long walk. It can be really simple things. Maybe if you're going to kids' activity, do a 10-minute walk while you're waiting for them. Can you walk to the shop instead of driving? Even if you drive there, can you park far away in the car park? All of these things, I promise you, will add up, and it really is as simple as that. My client Helen, who's in the program, she's really taken this on board and she's now involving her family in it, which I just love to hear. So she's getting her daughter to go out with her for walks in the evening. So making it a real kind of family affair. And then we come on to nutrition. Obviously, this is a super important one, a few bits to cover here. So in terms of fat loss, as I mentioned earlier, we essentially need to be eating fewer calories than we expend, and that means a calorie deficit. So we want to be aiming for 500 calories as a deficit. Now, I know that that's really easy for me to say, and I'm very happy to look at calories for people at the end of the call when we come to questions. So if you'd like me to work yours out or maybe check what you're currently doing, then I'm more than happy to do that at the end. Which I've just said. So the key things that we want to be doing over and above making sure that we're in that calorie deficit is, so we want to limit our processed food, sugary drinks and juices, etc. A couple of reasons for that. I mentioned one of the things about when once we've turned 40, we can hold more fat around our tummies, and that's because we're not as good at processing glucose. So of course, avoiding things like sugary drinks, processed food, etc. will help that. And also avoiding these type of things because they typically do cause us to have that rise and fall in our blood sugar levels. That's what makes us to feel hungry. So if we're trying to limit the amount of those we have in our diet, then we should find that we aren't as hungry, and makes that deficit easier to sustain. Fibre will also help with this, as well as supporting gut health, and it can also help to lower cholesterol. So again, going back to what I mentioned earlier, women who are in perimenopause or postmenopause can often find that their cholesterol is higher, so including more fibre will help with this. And everybody, the daily recommended guideline is 30 grams a day. It's one of those that I think even if you think that you eat healthily, and this was me before Christmas, most of the country is actually getting less than 20 grams a day, which is clearly nowhere near what we need. So it's one to track and make sure that you're including in your diet. We then need to make sure, of course, that we're eating enough protein because that's what will protect the muscle that we're either trying to build or maintain. And eating too little can actually slow everything down and make fat loss harder. And that's, again, something that I'd mentioned earlier. So it's definitely not about going as low as possible with our calories, because what will happen then is that either we'll lose weight very quickly, but even if we do, our metabolism will slow down because we'll have started to break down our muscle as well as losing fat. So yeah, everything then just becomes that much harder. And the best way to do this is simply to track. So yeah, guesswork rarely works. You can't look at a plate of food and know how many calories are on it. So there are loads and loads of free apps out there that support calorie tracking. And this is an example of another client that I've been working with for a number of months, actually. And when we started working together, she hadn't tracked calories before, and she was convinced that she was overeating. But when we looked at it, she was actually eating only 1,100 calories a day. She wasn't doing any strength training. So we've really had to do a lot of work there, to build trust that eating more is going to be okay, and obviously getting some strength in. But the combination of those two things have kick-started her metabolism. She has lost more than a stone now since we've been working together. She's getting some great muscle definition in her legs and arms, and is just essentially going from strength to strength. And then the last one is all about accountability and starting with mindset. So people are more likely to change behaviour if they have the confidence that they can do it. So what I mean by that is, if we tell ourselves that, for example, well, now that I'm over 40, I just can't seem to lose weight anymore. So yeah, what do you think would be the likely outcome if that's the type of language that we're using to talk to ourselves? Feel free to pop your thoughts in the Zoom chat. I'm sure you can see where I'm going with it. But essentially, if that's the kind of language that we're using to talk to ourselves, then the likely outcome, of course, is that we are going to find it harder to lose weight, because that's what we keep telling ourselves. But if we were to flip that and tell ourselves that actually we can do it, we've suddenly got that more positive mindset and are much more likely to approach the things we need to do with more confidence and actually get them done. Also find that attaching a value to the goal also helps. So that might be as simple as, I'm sure most people will resonate with this. If you've got a summer holiday coming up, you're trying to lose X amount of weight in order that you look like Y when you go on holiday. So that's sort of what keeps you going. But it might just be that you simply want to lose a certain amount of weight, but working out, if it's not a holiday, what is it that is going to give you in your life? So is it going to mean that you've got more energy to perform better at work, or is it going to give you more energy to be a better partner, parent, XYZ? Having that knowledge, I think, also attached to the goal makes it that much easier to stick to. And it can take 6 months or longer, actually, to form a new habit, because we move through kind of a model of change and we go through various stages, and it can take us, as it says there, kind of up to 6 months to form and really have that habit locked in. But before then, and sometimes even after, it is completely normal to have setbacks as well. So having the right support around you makes a huge difference. And where motivation comes and goes, accountability is what keeps you going when motivation doesn't. And so having somebody checking in with you, adjusting your plan and keeping you honest is the difference between knowing what to do and actually getting it done. And I've got an example here of my client Jess, who has been going to the gym for a number of years, knows really mostly what she needed to be doing, but the difference for her, I think, is having the accountability, having a goal, working out with somebody what the steps are to do it, and that's been the difference with what she's achieved in literally 2 months. And again, absolutely incredible result and looks amazing. So in terms of a recap, so we've talked about the principles behind losing fat, that it's all about energy balance and why that can feel like it's harder after we turn 40. The importance of strength training being the only way that we can meaningfully change muscle and metabolism at this age. How important nutrition is and eating in a way that supports not only fat loss, but also as we age. How important movement is to use everyday activity to support your results and not just workouts. And accountability is very often that missing piece that turns knowing what to do into actually doing it. So from there, we're going to go into questions in a minute, but I just wanted to say that if you're interested in having a conversation with me, I'm running an offer for the next 24 hours only. And this is only for people who are watching the call live. So this won't be available after that. But yeah, if you'd like to have a conversation, drop me a message on Instagram with the word offer and we can get a short call booked in. But essentially, where do you go from here? I think you've got three options. So if your goal is to lose weight, build strength, and feel more confident, then you can either keep doing what you're doing. I'm guessing chances are that's has limited success at the moment, which is why you're on the call this evening. You can take what you've learned tonight and try by yourself, or you can book a 10-minute call with me and we can talk about how we can work together to do it the proven way.